What I feel like I've been seeing with a lot of creatives lately too is that place of idleness where maybe they're scared to even continue to progress. We have people who are very overambitious and undereducated in their own field. You're like, I want to be a pop artist. What does that mean? I don't know. I'm going to give it to the Lord. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you going to give to what? Who inspires you in that field? Kim Walker, she's great. I'm like, is Kim Walker? Is that? There are people who stay still for too long and play that off as like, I'm just waiting for God. Are you more scared than you've been admitting about your craft lately? That maybe 2 years ago you should have been further than you are now. Because I've been there when it comes to guitar, and I play guitar sometimes, but I'm also a heavy vocalist, so I like to scream and just beat people up in a controlled setting. I know.
It's okay.
I would often find that I would make excuses to why I couldn't build other parts of my craft that maybe the Lord's calling me to. I'd give myself all the right good excuses that a performance would agree with, but not something that God would agree with.
Hey guys, my name is Angela and welcome to the AXL podcast. AXL exists to equip and empower sons and daughters to advance the kingdom of heaven through their creative expressions. In this season of our podcast, we are exploring our drivers. So we gathered some leaders from our community to help share and discuss how they're applying these drivers to their daily lives. Let's jump in.
The driver we're touching on today is presence over performance. Let's go. So this is massive to our community, right? Like this is this is like part of the heart. So I'm excited to get to dive into it. But before we do, there might be people like when we say presence over performance. What does that mean? Good. Mm-hmm. So just want to open up the floor for us to start there. When we say presence, what's that mean? Anybody can
I would just say the presence of God. The word presence in the Bible, it actually means face. And so when I think of the presence of God, especially in the context of presence over performance, it is the face of God over the face of man. That's the heart behind the driver as a whole. But yeah, it's the presence of God. And I think sometimes we can hear that phrase, the presence of God, and it can almost be a cliche in certain circles of Christians. But the presence of God isn't like a feeling. It's not goosebumps. It's not dope worship song, service that feels good. But it's actually, it means the spirit of Jesus came into the room. Or it's when we're saying his presence is here, we're saying he is here. The God, creator God, the one who threw the stars in the skies, but that's the God that we're saying is here when we're saying his presence is here. That's how I would say.
And that's good because it also makes me think of like you have to be aware of a presence. You have to be aware of what you're going to walk into a room and do. And any kind of creative context you're thinking of, you are aware of an intangible presence. So when you see the face of God, is the face going to manifest in the corner of the room, or are you aware spiritually what's happening in this place that I maybe can't be seeing? That's the way that I picture it too.
That's so good.
Wow. I love that.
That's beautiful. I love that.
So if we're going to define presence, I think we should also define performance so we can really clearly understand what are we putting over what. And so to you guys, when we say performance, what does that mean? Because some people might picture a stage and some people might picture somebody putting on a mask. And for this context, what does that look like?
I would say, as you were talking about it, I saw like pleasing to blank. So when it comes to performance, there's like a pleasing to people, to perform for people. And so there's this element where whether you're actually as an artist playing, and this could be applicable. I know this is like a creative setting, but it can apply to business. It can apply to many different realms. Like, am I as performance? Like, am I pleasing the person, this other person? And that's where that's how I see performance. That's the sole goal is to please others.
Yeah, and it almost goes back to that topic that you're bringing up, where like it becomes the driver of why you're alive now is to reach those goals through performance. Because everyone probably thought of checklists and they're like, that's not spiritual enough. I'm on a podcast. How do I like sound really cool? But a lot of that really comes down to now, if you're talking about the presence of God and a performance. Now you are living to reach that performance. So everything you do is around that. That's why we're trying to depict and show the difference between the two of how we're choosing to live for God, a presence we can't see, over living for attaining a goal that's going to, what we think, how far it could go. Because I don't know, you know?
Yeah, it makes me, the word performance makes me think of, and you kind of alluded to it, but like in a business, you know, you think of like performance review. And it's someone grading you based off of how you do. It's someone deciding themselves, did you do good enough?
Yes.
It's about the doing. It's am I good enough? Did I perform up to your standards?
That's good.
So that's what I think of when I think of performance.
I would agree.
When you say, go ahead.
No, I was just going to share. It feels like the dichotomy between, am I choosing to fear the Lord and his presence, or am I choosing to fear man and their approval and that standard? So as you're talking about that performance, am I choosing to say, I make it or break it based off of what someone else says of what I'm carrying? Or is it, God, did your presence come? Were you here? Did you rest in this place when I decided to open up my voice or take out my creative gifting and painting or visual arts and anything like that? Just deciding what is my standard. My standard will be his presence and not the performance standard that's been given. So I think about performance.
I love that.
When I've been, when I've been thinking about the difference as well, I've been thinking about how performance is like housed in authenticity towards the Lord, whereas not performance, presence is housed in authenticity towards the Lord, whereas performance is housed in an act and a putting up of a front rather than just real relationship with Jesus.
Pastor Jazz, when you were talking, I love that performance is doing, and so it reminds us that presence is being. That when we're actually focused on the presence of God, you can still perform. I think that's like the wrestle. When people hear this driver, the tension is, I'm an artist. I'm supposed to perform. It's like, no, you can still perform, but is it from a place of being versus are you doing it for the face of people?
Well, I think it's in the nature of the language that we've used for the drivers in the sense of it is presence over performance, not presence don't you dare perform. You know, like it's we're not saying that we don't perform. We're saying that we're not driven by performance. That is not the win for us. How we did for you is not actually going to be the win that drives us. That's not how we gauge our success. We're saying that our gauge for success is the presence of God. Is pleasing the Father, is living before his face and saying, was this good enough for you? Over what people think about what we are bringing to the table.
Like I think that's important, Pastor, because as I was going over these and even talking with Lauren a little bit before, it's not that these other words that are like in conjunction to them are bad or evil. Those are just words. But when you actually learn to overcome these pieces and put God before in all of them, then you're going to be in that area where everyone always wonders, how can I be creative and hit that spot, that oil, as some people say, or the anointing that I see on a church Sunday. How can I do that in my own? It's when you healthily take those words, we're going over performance, but how can you make sure you were so efficient and so elite at what you feel called to do that you know how to get out of the way whenever God's saying, now's my time.
Yes. I always feel like performance, the presence is when it's unto the Lord, and performance is when it's unto something else. And that's the difference. Is we can perform, but it has to be unto the Lord for the oil and the presence of the Lord to be poured out and to move in that, rather than unto a man or unto some other idol in our lives.
That's so good.
Because you realize that once you're like living life according to his presence over performance, if he simply asks you to paint a picture, for some, I'm like, okay, I'll paint the picture.
Right.
And for those who may be operating more in the performance way, like, oh, I need to monetize this. I need to get this out. I need to make sure I make a bunch of money on it.
Literally, yeah.
When God only said,
yes.
paint it, you know?
I said,
And no telling the root or the cause as to why he's asking you to paint that picture. And it could just be for that one person
Yes.
that as you're walking by,
Yeah.
if you're in tune, you're encountering him daily, he's like, hey, give that picture to this person.
Exactly.
You know, it's different, you know? And like a song or a performance, like, yeah, he could have asked you to play at a bar.
Yeah.
And
Right.
it's only one person in that bar. If it was performance over presence, you look at the situation and be like,
That's good.
I failed.
what is this?
Yeah.
I failed. But it could have been, if it's his presence over performance, you look around like, okay, Lord, you obviously wanted me to be here.
Yeah.
So now you get to get this room and I get to do what you've gifted me to do in this moment.
Yeah, performance has a funny way of making you do more than what was asked of you.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
Like, you know, the Lord will invite us to do things just for him, to please him. He'll give us an instruction,
Man,
give us
that's
something
good.
that he's inviting us into.
Yeah.
And there's something about performance, because I believe performance is often, again, I perform on stages all the time. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
You're
I'm a
creative
singer-songwriter
artist,
outside of just being a worship leader. And so there's nothing wrong with performing, but it's interesting when we're driven by performance, it's like, we can almost move into this orphan mentality where it's like we think we have to do more than we actually need to do for the pleasure of God, for the smile to come, for his eyes. And so we just do extra, you know, those people that you're like, just extra, like you're just doing too much. And a lot of times it's because somebody's in that performance space where they're just trying to work for love, work for approval, work for affirmation, work to know that they're, you know, and we don't have to do that. We don't have to live like that.
That's so good. When you're talking, it actually reminds me, you think of a child who just like spent all their time like drawing this thing and then they hand it up to their parents like, look, and they look down at them and they're so happy. What if the child waited and said, I'm only gonna wait until I'm like Picasso level? And so even when you're talking about presence over performance, and it being like, it's not necessarily even about the skill set when it comes to presence. It's about what did dad lead you to do? What did he ask you to do? And so in moments where we're caught up on, oh, I didn't do it well enough. We might not actually be giving him what he's asking for. Versus when we're focused on, okay, he told me to paint a picture. I'm not a great artist.
Yeah, that's really good.
But I'm just going to go after this thing and I'm going to give you what you asked for, Dad. And then show it and he smiles. He's pleased versus I'm going to hide it. I think that's what we can do sometimes when we focus on performance is hide it.
There's so many parts to that. And the first piece is, I think that I've met so many creatives, especially even like in being here in Texas, but there's this idea of you have to wait till you're extremely skilled to do something, and there is merit to that because you can't go out and be terrible. Like everyone's gonna see it. How do I do, bro? We gotta talk backstage, like, you know. But part of, exactly, you gotta get feedback. But part of that is, I always tell my band, and they don't understand sometimes. I'm in a heavier band. We do a lot of heavier music.
Come on.
And I tell them oftentimes I am always going to be one of the most average musicians in the room, but it's that meekness that's going to allow God to use this band. Trust me. We make band decisions. If you're in a like music with anybody, everyone's divas. I'm a diva at times, trust me. But one thing the guys understand is if what they know about me is I know my place. I know how average I am, because being meek is what gives you that ability, that access to God's power in ways that you can't do on your own. And because of that, we're put in places, predicaments with people in good ways that we only got there because I was willing to be in a place that maybe others didn't until they thought they were better.
That's so good.
Yeah, and he doesn't need our strength or our skill. He needs our humility and our authenticity. And in James is where it says he gives grace to the humble. He opposes the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. So we can like trust in the grace of God when we come in our need and our humility. And I feel like that is a huge part of understanding God's presence, is understanding our need for the presence of God, not just knowing that we have, you know, I have this gift of singing, but like, no, I need God's presence and I'm hungry for his presence and I long for his presence. That is the difference between his presence and not his performance. Presence over performance is that we need and we long and we create an appetite for his presence so that we miss him on certain days and we realize, I missed him yesterday. I need more of him today.
That is so true.
There's a call to abiding with his presence. And so if, as sons and daughters who create, like there's an importance, there's like a demand on abiding as a son, as a daughter, because if we're abiding in him, like, and we know our identity, everything else flows from that place. And so you won't strive, you won't have to do these things as like an orphan would, because you are a son and a daughter of God. And so you get to abide in him everywhere you go, every opportunity. And it's beautiful.
I think it's John 15 where he's talking about abiding. And Jesus literally says, if you abide in me and I in you, you will bear fruit. And then he says, but apart from me, you will bear no fruit.
Nothing.
Like,
if I'm not there, nothing's happening.
I want you to know, if my presence is not there, then this means nothing. Like, nothing will come of this if it's not in me and me and you understanding and living in that reality. And the other thing that I wanted to say is there's kind of, and we kind of touched on, I feel like, one side of a coin, and that is the creatives that maybe they're being asked to do things that they don't feel like they can do. Maybe they don't have the skill that they feel like they should have in that space of just give it to the Lord, give him what he's asking for, like just please him, you know. But then there's this also other side that I think is important to note, because both will be listening to this podcast. And the other side of it is, you know, in the Bible, it talks about Daniel being skilled. And the beauty of Daniel being skilled, and even those who build the tabernacle, like they had skills. And the beauty of being skilled is that when you are skilled at something, it actually allows you to be in a position to let the presence of God flow in a different way. For example, in a worship set on a Sunday, I'm looking at Hope because she's a worship leader. But in a worship set on Sunday, you know, you can know 2 chords and the presence of God come in. It's awesome. And you can find a certain number of melodies and songs within those 2 chords. But if you know 8 chords,
praise God,
there are more songs that you have access to just because you know more chords. You know what I mean? And so it doesn't mean that one is better necessarily than the other, or that God loves more than the other, but we have more room. There's more facets that get opened up to be able to minister to him, and when we know more, when we're more skilled.
I was in Isaiah 40, I've been processing this, where it says to make the mountains and the hills low, and to raise the valleys so the glory of the Lord can come in. And I feel like even as we prepare in his presence, like we can perform well. With the preparation is us saying, I'm going to make this mountain low, and I'm going to raise up this valley so it's easy for his glory to ride in when I'm performing. I remember I was performing for something that, it was a song that I hadn't written. It was someone else's song, and I remember
just say it.
She had to sing my song at an event.
I was gonna say
because I couldn't come.
So it was one time I was asked to sing for one of our House of Business Justice Reform. And it was supposed to be Pastor Jasmine's song, and she was like, can you sing this? Because her voice was gone. She was really sick. I was like, yeah, I know this song. You know, I've sung it before, but I never played it before. So I'm like trying to learn the chords. I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't know. But I get it, and I get it down. But I remember I had been leading worship for a year, and I hadn't really performed that year. And I called Pastor Jazz. I was like, I forgot how to perform. Like, I don't know. I've been so like presence driven. I forgot how to perform. And she said, oh, it's okay. Like, breathe, first of all. But carry his presence in your performance. And if you spend time with the Lord, just like Jalen, you were saying, we have to abide in him. If we spend time with him, we learn his voice. We learn what it sounds like. The word says that his children, his sheep, know his voice. When we know what he's saying, it's easy to obey when it's our first time painting, or if it's our 30th show on tour, and he's saying, no, I want you to sing this song different because someone needs to hear this verse. I want you to sing that chorus again. And it's not the way it's supposed to be, but that win is that you followed what the Father said, and that's his presence over performance. And
that's how it goes. It was in a nutshell. And so what I want to add to this that I've seen, and I'm completely okay with being wrong with it. I don't mind being wrong. What I don't like is if someone doesn't speak from their heart that the Lord's prompted them to. What I feel like I've been seeing with a lot of creatives lately too is that place of idleness where maybe they're scared to even continue to progress. We have people who are very overambitious and undereducated in their own field. You're like, I want to be a pop artist. What does that mean? I don't know. I'm going to give it to the Lord. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you going to give to us? Who inspires you in that field? Kim Walker, she's great. I'm like, is Kim Walker? Is that? I don't really know. I don't really know if she is. You know what I mean? I don't really know if she is, but in the middle of that, there are people who stay still for too long and play that off as like, I'm just waiting for God. Are you more scared than you've been admitting about your craft lately? That maybe 2 years ago you should have been further than you are now. Because I've been there when it comes to guitar, and I play guitar sometimes, but I'm also a heavy vocalist, so I like to scream and just beat people up in a controlled setting. I know.
In a control, it's okay.
But what was interesting to me is that I would often find that I would make excuses to why I couldn't build other parts of my craft.
No, that's good.
That maybe the Lord's calling me to. Well, I got to lead this band and we got to do this, and it's not as easy as people think. And I'd give myself all the right good excuses that a performance would agree with, but not something that God would agree with.
I don't
on
think you're
that
wrong.
piece.
I think you're stepping on toes.
Yeah. And when I was thinking about it, and it makes me interesting because I know like I've not been on worship, so I always wonder if other people see or feel these types of things too, where I'm like, it's funny. We have a lot of parents who think like this. They're like, okay, we like first, second, and third place trophies, participation awards. We do without them. But when it comes to creativity, we all want a participation award for what?
Yeah.
Wow.
So if you didn't get to first, second, or third place, then you can now measure your skill. And failure is an okay thing when it comes to this field. Yes. I didn't even place this year, but you know what? I grew in my skill versus just, you know what, I'm going to throw a song to God and wave my hands and have people at AXL pat me on the back. And then a month from now, I'm still going to be depressed. My song is going to be nowhere. And I'm going to feel like nobody cares about me because you're waving this participation award like you're doing something when the Lord, the people that I've seen steward it well, they take it all the way to either it's successful or it didn't work out. But in the middle of that place, they're finding a lesson that's being taught to them that creatives are too scared to get in the lesson. You have to get to that place if you really want to grow.
And the thing is, if you are, I love that, Franco. And the thing is, if you are hearing God and obeying, if you're abiding, that's it. Then the wins along the way, whether success ends up looking the way people believe it should look or not the way people believe it should look, when the goal is presence over performance, you win just from obedience. Sometimes there are these ideas of success. I love having these conversations with creatives all the time where it's like, I'm like, what's success to you? And they're like, thousands of people, stadium. And I'm like, why is that success? And they're just like, because it's just what they saw on somebody's Instagram post by a famous person. And they think that is what success is. I'm like, so if you played at that coffee shop on Friday night because God told you to go there and play that show, and little Uniqua on the side that was getting, I don't know why she's Uniqua, but Uniqua was at the show. And little Uniqua gets rocked by the Spirit of God because of your song. If that is the only fruit,
that's it.
But that's what God said. You were successful. And you know what I mean? So I just think that has to be the gauge along the way of success, or else we'll find ourselves never getting to the thing that we think is success and feel like all of it was a failure the whole time. You know what I'm saying? And it's not. It doesn't have to be like that.
When you're talking, I think of David. Like even when you were talking Franco, one of the things, the presence will lead us to prepare. Right. So
absolutely.
He had to wrestle the lion and the bear before Goliath, but it was because God's leading, right?
And he was in the field.
And he was in the field working. And I think that's the thing for a lot of creators. And even what you're saying, it speaks to me, right, in different spaces of my life. And that's kind of where I want to turn the conversation just a little bit is I know there are places that I've been paralyzed, and at the same time, that is fear. To not be presence driven or to not be led by the presence of God means that you're living in something else. And there were times in my creativity I was driven by fear. And realizing, I'm not focused on him. So I need to begin to follow him and take the steps, because this means I'm focused on performance. What if I fail, right? But it's because I based success on something that God never said it was. And so I just want to hear from you guys. Has there been times in your lives where you said, I realized I actually chose performance over presence here? And what did it look like? What was the epiphany moment? And then how did you shift?
That's good.
I was like, no, Jay, hey, please.
I would say it's kind of the same as what you're saying. It's like the paralyzation of the imitation of God. And it's like, okay, for me, like I worship, but then also like God's calling me to other things as well, like in conjunction.
Tell us what he's calling you to.
Like what?
Come on
like what?
Community, you know what I'm saying?
Tell us.
Like fashion and music. And so when
interior design,
you know,
graphic design,
fix my house.
Fix my house too. I'm right there.
And one of the things that I'm learning now in this season, our pastor said he had a beautiful message just about the spirit of mammon and dealing with fear and everything like that. And one of the things that awakened in me, and God brought this beautiful, convicting, loving, correcting illustration using in his word. It was about the parable of the talents, and it was a season where a lot of things were happening at the same time. And God was speaking. He was speaking about music. He was speaking about worship. He was speaking about fashion. And I'm like, this is a lot. I don't know what to do. And Jalen, back in the day, Jalen would have been like, I ain't doing none of this. But that version of Jalen in that season was like, okay, I can handle like a couple of them, you know, and just like parable of talents, you know, it speaks about him giving different talents to different people and entrusting them with it to come back. And so God gave me a vision during the service, and he was like, Jalen, I gave you 5 talents. You ran with 3 and you put 2 in the ground. And it was like, I was like, oh my God. Like, it was just a beautiful vision of like, oh wow. And our Pastor Landon, he was just like, his prayer, he asked like, Lord, can you help me increase my capacity to carry the things that you want for me in this season. And I did that with music and fashion. Like, I just kind of like, I was fearful, like, how would it turn out? Like, what would this sound like? What do I do next? Like, where do I go? And I had a song written a year ago that I haven't even done anything with, that I'm working on now.
Yeah, you are.
Because it was a delay because of my fear. You know?
Working on it. I heard that.
You know? Wait till I record it. You know? It's coming out. But yeah, that's an example where literally that performance, that fear of failure or fear of what this could even look like, and not literally abiding with the Lord, be like, I care about what could happen, but Lord, I trust you with this process, and whatever it looks like, whoever it reaches, like with me just doing it with you is what matters the most.
That's good.
I feel like that goes back to our sonship and daughtership, because in that scripture, it's also where one of the men with the talents said, I knew you to be a hard man. And so anytime we are trying to hold on to something or trying to perform without the grace of the Lord, it's where we've actually missed a piece of his fathering.
That's good.
And even this week, I felt this reminder of how he is the I am. And so there are pieces and parts and facets of God that we will always be learning, but especially in our generation, there is a lack of fathering. And so there are pieces of God in fathering that we need to be learning every single day. And there's things that even a good parent wouldn't be able to minister to us, like the fathering of God and the word of God. So that's something I'm still walking out in this season of like, Lord, show me what is your fathering look like in this situation. In planning a wedding and paying for a wedding, what does it look like to receive the grace of the Lord and to trust in what you've entrusted to me in this season?
Planning a wedding.
Yes. I want to speak to what kind of similar to your story, Jalen. You're talking about the talents. I didn't know this, but that same Sunday, the Lord said to me that week, you have 5 talents in your hand. And like, I need you to learn, we're going to steward these together. And I think it was 2019. I actually lost my job. And there's a day that I asked the Lord for more time. I said, God, can you give me more time? Because I'm supposed to write this book and I'm supposed to sing. And I'm supposed Literally, I remember that morning, my husband and I prayed and I was like, I don't know what I just asked for. And I lost my job because my capacity to do that and everything else I was called to, I couldn't handle it all. He actually asked me to leave the job earlier because he was trying to be gracious. But that day when I lost my job, I said, okay, Lord, like, what do you want me to do with what's in my hand right now? And so he began to give vision for so many different things. But before that, he said, I want you to tend to the garden of your family. That was the first thing he said. And so we had 2 children at the time. And I was learning how to mother well in that season. And then after that, he said that, he began to give me vision for songs and like, okay, I want you to release 4 singles. Like, I just had this he just was so clear in what he was speaking. And that year came up and I just laid it all down. Like, I remember I talked to Pastor Jazz and I had this beautiful plan and I just stopped doing it all. And it was this fear of like, God, well, you told me to like serve my family. So anything that I thought would hurt my family, I was like, nope, not doing it, doing it. Because my measure of performance and success was that like I was always with my kids, and like God was like, no, I wanted that to be your foundation. That family was your foundation, so you could run well in these other areas, these other talents I'm asking you to run in. And so recently he's just been like, Lauren, I want you to, that was that same Sunday, Lauren, pick up the things I asked you. I gave you a very clear blueprint. And so this Monday we began recording a demo for something that like, it was just crazy. And I wasn't concerned about the sound because I'd spent so much time thinking of, what sound am I carrying? My singer-songwriter, my pot, whatever. It was like, no, just go with the person I told you to go do the demo with, and that's your obedience today. And when you get there, you'll get the next step of obedience. And when you get from there, you'll get the next step of obedience. And it's so fun in his presence. Like we say here at our church at Mercy Culture, everything is easy in your presence. And it's so easy and it's fun when we say yes to him, as opposed to the year and a half that I lost being paralyzed with fear. Because performance will help you to choose fear. That's what you're doing. Like you said, you're partnering with fear. And no more. Like I won't do that. I won't leave that legacy for our children. I won't leave that legacy for those who are called to create in the lanes that we're leveling the ground for his glory to come in.
Thanks for joining us. We pray that these conversations resonated with you. If you would like to keep up with what's happening at AXL, you can follow us on Facebook or on Instagram at AXL Creative Co. We'll see you next time. What's up, guys? My name is Angela.
My name is Zach.
Hey guys, I'm Cheyenne.
Hey, what's up? I'm Chris. Thank you so much for watching the
AXL Creative Co channel.
Before you go, I know that you want to get to that new recipe, but really quick, we want to make sure that you like and subscribe, and also comment below if our videos have resonated with you. You can check out anywhere on this screen for more of our content, more of our videos. We can't wait to see you soon.